Hi there, it's Louise here of Timeless Craft Mama, and today I'm sharing a scrapbook layout process video with you created for my DT position with A2Z Scraplets. Now what I've done is I've used the 2016 chipboard and combined it with some delicious Cocoa Vanilla Studio papers that I had in my stash. I'd picked a photo that I quite liked of myself, very unusual for me as I mostly scrap my boys. And I wanted to kind of have a bit of a play around with sort of this 8.5 by 11 sort of scrapbook page. So I've cut my paper down, but I am going to mount it on some white card just so it fits in my 12 by 12 album. Now to treat this chipboard, what I'm doing is giving it a couple of coats of Colour Blast embossing powder in Envy. Now my personal preference when I'm using the Colour Blast embossing powder is to give it 2 coats. The first coat I find looks okay, but it just doesn't have that luster like what 2 coats of the embossing powder does. It just gives it a nice even coverage, and you get this beautiful shimmer and you get that real smooth texture. So I'm going to show you just a little bit of a close-up just so that you can see the coverage on that chipboard. It's really quite fun to use those smaller chipboards on the page as part of your titles. So the next thing I'm going to do is just apply some white gesso over the page. Now the reason for that is because the background paper was quite bright and I just really wanted to dull that down a little bit. That, and I'm also going to use my distress crayons just to add a little bit more of that turquoise colour in the background. Now you'll see that this layout did sort of develop as I progressed, because I am also going to later on add a couple of more mixed media elements as well. But the distress crayons are one of my favourite ways to add sort of that watercoloured background with the packaging technique. Now I've taken a stencil and I'm going to go ahead and use a couple of the different Colour Blast paste products, and what I'm going to do is just spread them around the page, and then I'm going to use a different spatula to mix those colours. Now you don't want them mixed because you don't want to end up with a icky brown mess all over your page, but you can spread them around through that stencil and just gradually blend the colours. So blending is a better word I find than mix, because we don't want to mix colours and end up with something that looks like the 3-year-old did it. But you can see that once it dries you get this really cool blending of the colours. Now the journaling was quite important on this particular layout because I knew that I was going to call it Reflections of 2016, so I really wanted to look back at some of the things that had happened this year, and I know it's not the end of the year yet, but let's face it, Christmas is a busy time, and if I can get this particular page done now, I know that it's done and it's going to end up in the album. So I've pre-written up my journaling on the little 3x4 cutout card. I've got my title ready, my photos ready. I've used some of the frames. I'm going to glue those down. I'm using cardboard as well just to mount up some of the elements in the layout that need to be raised. So just because they're sitting on top of that wood frame. Now one of the little things I will mention here is that I've noticed with some of my older layouts, sometimes if I haven't used a sort of a tacky glue or some kind of extra adhesive, it can tend to lose its stick after a little bit of time, especially if you're applying these elements onto a mixed media background. I like to stick things down with adhesive and a tacky glue just because I know that they are going to hold as this page sits in an album for years to come. So if you are concerned about keeping your adhesive, keeping your elements stuck on the page, definitely double up on the adhesive. So using some form of double-sided tape, and of course the tacky glue as well. So I've put the little H for happy up the top underneath over the top of some cotton. Now the final step for this particular page is just to use some of the really nice cocoa vanilla flowers and spread them around the page. Don't forget to always include yourself in your albums and record your memories. I find for me doing it on a like a year-by-year basis really does let me look back and see how things have changed. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the A2Z Scraplets store and pick up some of the delicious chipboard products. Thanks.